Lost in Love, Dazzled by Her Curves, prequel from Enemies to Lovers series by Evelyn Love. Prologue. "I have just been made," the voice came over the earphone in her hair. She turned towards her host, an old man with a hardened face. The veins on his face were bulging out, and even when he tried to smile, he gave off the impression of being unable to do so. The smile went all the way to just below his eyes and stopped there. The eyes were hardened and bloodshot as he stared without winking at the beautiful young woman in front of him. The woman had her hand in her hair, smiling back. She did not look at all like her host. Blue eyes, red hair, and lips coated with red lipstick. She looked frail and delicate, the kind of woman a lot of hardened men would like to come home to. "Are you okay?" the man asked. He looked suspicious of her. He always suspected something. After all, he was a weapons dealer who was wanted by the United States of America for a lot of crimes he had committed, including the murder of a federal agent. "I'm okay. Do you have what I want?" she asked. "You don't get it that easy. You have to make me trust you." She knew what he meant by that. She and her partner had been after this man for a year and knew his weaknesses. There was only one: sex. It did not matter who he had it with, but he particularly had a soft spot for women who looked as delicate as her. "How about making me trust you?" she asked. "We can work something out." "Not the way I want it." "Come on, I don't bite." "I have the package," the voice said in her earphone. She knew it was time to leave. "Can I use the toilet?" she asked. He showed the way. A guard stood beside the bathroom door, waiting for her and undoubtedly listening for unusual sounds. The woman's first destination in the bathroom was the sink. She turned the tap on while she kept looking around for a way to get out of the place. She found it. The vent. It would take her into the ceiling. She would have a hard time finding her way from there, but she would at least be out of her host's hair before he discovered the missing package. She climbed on the sink so she could get to the vent over it. Grunting, she pulled it out. The sounds of her voice and actions were well masked by the running water in the tap. Still, the guard knocked. He was growing suspicious of water running continually. The woman paused. "What the fuck is it? I can't use the toilet anymore?" she asked with the air of one that was irritated. "Sorry, just making sure you are all right," the guard replied. She got into the vent and shut it. Then she began to creep through the ceiling, relying on her digital map. She wondered if her partner was waiting or if he had left her. It took an awful lot of time before she finally found herself outside the house. By then, the discovery had been made, and the guards were running helter-skelter, probably looking for her and her partner. She hid in the bushes around the house, and when she was sure they had all moved to another side of the compound, she crept out. The compound was a massive affair, and getting to the gate was going to be tough. In fact, she was sure the guards at the gate must have been alerted. "Hold it!" someone called from behind her just as she crossed the driveway into the woods in front of the house in an attempt to make a beeline for the gate. She turned around slowly to see one of the guards pointing a gun at her. One of her host's cars sped down the road towards the man from behind him. Before the guard could turn, he had already been hit by the car and was airborne. The car door opened and her partner stuck his head out. "Get in!" In that moment, the man had never looked more attractive, and she made a mental note to tell him just how attractive she thought he was, in bed. Chapter 1. Charles Hill was the top in his class at graduation, but that gave him no satisfaction. Such was his dissatisfaction with his education that he promptly abandoned it. He did not think being a lawyer from Harvard would be enough to effect the changes he wanted to make in the world. It was a good title, even better that he was a Harvard graduate, so he rejected every job offer that came his way, much to the annoyance of his dying father, the only person in his life. Oliver Hill, shortly before he passed on, threatened to remove Charles Hill from his inheritance if he did not spend time doing something worthwhile instead of spending the whole day shooting targets and learning kickboxing. Charles ignored him, so it came as a surprise to Charles when he heard that he was the sole heir of his late father's wealth, whose worth was estimated well into $20 billion. It was too much money, and he did not know what to do with it. It was the wealth that had made him disillusioned with life in the first place. With black earmuffs covering his ears, he stood in the shooting booth and waited for his target to come out. It was not cold, so he wore a light blue flannel shirt with leather trousers. His leather jacket was hanging behind him. When his target did come out, he shot it up fast. There were 5 other people in the booth, but there was only one person that was close to him, matching him in speed and accuracy. He walked out of his booth after the shooting and quickly went over to the booth where the other shooter was, only to find it empty. Strange, he thought. How did the person get out so fast? He walked out of the building and found his way to his motorcycle. "Charles?" a voice asked. It was a pretty female voice, soft but confident. Charles turned to look at her. "Charles Hill." "Who are you?" he asked. The first thing he noticed about the woman was her green eyes and the way she stared into his, as if she wanted to charm him. Her black hair contrasted with her green eyes. The blue tracksuit she wore clung to the shape of her legs as they went all the way up to her stomach. Her waist was tiny, probably the tiniest he had ever seen, and spread out to well-rounded and shapely hips. She was beautiful, but Charles knew she was not here to show how beautiful she was. "I have been watching you," she said, completely ignoring his question. He decided not to repeat it. He was sure she had heard him the first time. "You are a confusing subject, you know. Top of your class at Harvard, one of the wealthiest men in America, yet you are looking for something. Life is not private anymore, I see. You of all people should know that. Besides, your late father was kind of popular in some circles." "What circles?" You really do want to talk about it. How about I buy you lunch?" Charles looked at his motorcycle. There was no way he was going to leave it. "All right, I will go ahead in my car. Follow me." Her car was a big SUV that clung to the road. It looked like a bully, very unlike the woman who was driving it. He followed her to a restaurant and parked in the parking lot. When he got in, she was already sitting down and waiting for him. "You know what I think?" she said, beckoning to the waiter. "Should I particularly care?" She chuckled, and he found his mind memorizing every sound in the chuckle. He found himself taking snapshots of her happy face so he could look at it in his private time. "Water," Charles said when the waiter asked for his order. "So modest," the girl said. She was 5'7" and probably in her mid-20s. She was young. "What were you saying?" "What? What do you think?" "Ah, yes, that. The way I see it, you are mostly bored. Why do you lead a boring life when you have money to be able to travel the world? Do you have something against tourism?" "Are we here to discuss my father's wealth?" Charles asked. "Wait, are you his illegitimate daughter?" "What? I can let you have some of what he left once you bring proof." "Tempting, but I am not his daughter." She slid a card on the table over to him. "Jennifer Hunter, Special Agent, CIA." "What?" Charles asked, surprised. He examined the card. It looked genuine, but then he had never seen a secret agent's card before. "Yes. As I said, we have been watching you. What do you think about joining the CIA?" It came just like that. The question of what he was to do with his life. He had not expected it to come in this way. It was too sudden, and he was not prepared. "You know, in service to your country and her people." Service? That was the word, but now he did not know. Was he going to say yes because he wanted to be of service to his country, or because he wanted some adventure? "Does the reason matter?" he asked. She shrugged. "I will need to think about it," he said. "All right, Charles, you know where to find me." She stood up and walked towards the door. Charles watched her blue tracksuit disappear from sight. He stood up hurriedly and ran outside. There was no sign of her. There was no sign that she had even been there. He turned the card around. It revealed no contact information. Just CIA and her name. Shit. He shook his head. What was a fake CIA agent trying to get from him? How could he be so stupid? He kept forgetting that he was wealthy, mostly because he had not made the wealth himself. She could only want his wealth. He fished around in his pocket for his wallet and found it. Everything was just the way he had left it. Even his credit card. If Jennifer had taken anything, he did not know what it was. And she must really be a very good pickpocket to take something from his wallet. Slowly he walked back to his motorcycle and started it. All the way home he kept thinking about her. She seemed like a remarkable woman, and he really wanted to talk to her again, but he was not sure that would be possible. Away from her guarded and mysterious nature, her shape and curves invaded his senses. He arrived at his apartment and flung himself down on the sofa. His apartment was far away from his father's mansion. He did not know what he was trying to do, staying away from his father's wealth in this manner. His father's lawyer, now his lawyer, was still in charge of his father's estate, sending reports to him, most of which he had not bothered to read. He saw his phone blinking from a voicemail message, so he clicked on it. "Hello, Charles. It is Folden. Can you look over the reports I've been sending you? Or give me a day to come over and explain." He ended the message. He did not have the strength to start talking about too much wealth. He had been entertaining the thought of donating everything to charity, but had stopped short. Most of the organizations were corrupt, and the wealth would not get to where he wanted. Besides, he liked the wealth somehow. It was a cocoon, a comfort he could always fall back on when he felt his life was useless.